On this episode of Creative Constitution, we are going to talk about casting. What is involved in casting a project, and what can we say to actors in order to improve your chances of getting cast in projects?
Amazing.
How good.
What a great summary.
Casting is simply the process of a casting director or a filmmaker or a director or a writer sometimes choosing their preferred actors for characters that have been designed for a story. We've now cast several projects, so we've done a number of films, and from our experiences having done both acting and directing, I think we can speak pretty evenly about what the process is like.
Yeah, 100%. Being on both sides now is really, it's great. Honestly, it's a great feeling. It's very enlightening in the sense that the rose-colored glasses come off. And that is a term you'll probably hear me use a lot in this podcast because I use it a lot now in life. When those rose-colored glasses do come off, you go from just the actor's perspective, the performer, the actor being the most important thing, the magic you can bring to that character, that story, and they come off when you're casting for a project. Mm-hmm. And we learnt this doing our stuff, and so valuable because as an actor, you no longer take things personally. After coming back from being a casting director now, both of us have been director. Well, you've been a director, I've been a casting director. So I can come back to being an actor now and no longer feel as, damaged or as like, oh, I didn't go.
Yeah.
When you see from the casting director's perspective, interestingly enough, before you just said casting directors sometimes aren't the only ones to make the decision. It could be the director that actually has a preferable actor, or it could be the writer themselves, which is also very interesting because, hey, the writer could know nothing about acting and performance, and they could just be a great storyteller, but not, and they could choose someone who isn't maybe a great actor, and that's an interesting
It just
path
depends
to go down.
on how involved that person might be. Because, for example, with myself, on Devoured, we used the casting director, one of our friends, Christina Fern, absolute legend. And
The best.
she ended up giving me a number of different people for the role of Martha. So Martha was one of the roles that was up for grabs, and I really wanted her help to try and get someone really talented and that could really elevate the production. So Christina and I had a number of conversations around what the character was like, what we were looking for, some of the traits, some of the characteristics that I had in mind.
And they were very specific, weren't
Very
they? It was
specific.
a specific look, it was specific character traits, specific voice, feel. When you look at that person's face, that's the character.
And I think just stepping back a little, I was also the writer of Devoured. So straight from the get-go, I already had a thought in my mind, almost a vision of what I wanted the characters to look like. So going to a casting director, it was almost very easy because I could almost give her reference pictures of who I was looking for, and then she could just go to her network and see who might be the right fit. So Christina came back with a number of different persons, a number of different people that could potentially be that character. And then straight away, a number of them kind of just were really evident that they would be a good fit, visually mainly. That's before you even meet them and get an audition. But that's the first step,
well.
right?
They could have been the most talented, brown-haired, 40-year-old lady that you'd ever seen.
Exactly.
But that's not what we were looking for.
No.
Because
I already had kind of that person in mind, it was just even... And this sometimes sounds terrible because you want diversity, you want to try and be inclusive.
But that's
and all
the thing
that.
again.
But
do you want to cast because of the look of a person, or do you want to not cast because of the look? Because that is a what's it called, a paradox, or like
Yeah.
a contradiction of itself. So if the character is got to be a 70-year-old white old lady with short hair, there's not a lot of movement in that.
And that can sometimes be difficult
Yeah.
to grasp as an actor when you're so
Yeah.
willing to do anything and you know that you can play any role.
The amount of times we've been put forward for things that we know with a bit of makeup or something, we could have easily pulled off a little bit of aging. But at the end of the day, they're going to go with the 200-pound, 40-year-old ranger dude with a beard, not me, because the writer wrote him as that. So I could put up the best audition. They're not going to choose me. It doesn't matter. They're not even going to watch the tape.
Exactly. And that's why first impressions is so important. And when we were casting for Devoured and we had 3 headshots to look at, you know, it's almost really easy if you are the director and you're looking at those pictures and you're like, actually, from the get-go, I knew that person A was the type and the characteristics that I was looking for. And then it's really just, you know, they're the right shape for the box.
Yes.
That's really what it is. And then at the end, it's whether they can act.
You could have 20 really talented people, or you could have 10 in that 20 that are terrible and 10 that are really talented. And you could narrow that down straight away because visually and voice-wise and
Yeah,
looks-wise,
voice is so important.
only 5 could ever get away with being that character, even with a haircut. Because
Yes.
that's just the way it is. If you change the look of the character, the feel's gone, the energy's gone, the movie's dead, falls on its face because the feeling isn't there anymore. And so
Exactly.
from that 5, you can go, okay, who can actually act? Maybe there's only one. Maybe all 5 of them are brilliant. And then that's even harder decision.
You know, when you are looking for actors for your projects, or if you're an actor looking to get into projects, it often comes down to whether that look is suggestive of the character that is being cast. And that means that there is a role for everyone. I mean, you exist on this planet and you have a role in this reality. So there is definitely a role for you in a film. But whether that film is the one that's being cast right now, that's a whole entirely different story that is completely out of your control.
100%.
And as actors, we so often want control because we want to be able to give the project what we want. We want to be able to give the project our talent and to, you know, to leap forward with our careers. But so often, the person that was writing that project had, you know, someone with extremely long hair, small build, and a higher pitched voice.
Yeah, and it's great that you bring up build because here's another example. When we cast for Immy and I was scouting, I was trying to find our Spencer. And build was something that had everything to do with it. Spencer's character did change over time. Some creative input changed my initial idea from what I wanted him to look like.
Well, sometimes there's limitations in the market.
Yeah, and just film industry. So we settled on troubled teen, you know, real mischievous, real a-hole kind of teen. Robs old ladies and does graffiti everywhere and, you know, does naughty things. And so we had various auditions. I think there was one from a fella that was really built. He was like 20.
He was really large.
He was like 22, 23, and he was jacked and he was handsome and he was taller than me. And I said, well, I'm David, so that's not going to work. And then we had a friend say, oh, just look at his tape, look at his tape. Great. I looked at his tape, it was great. He was probably better actor than me. His self-tape was better than the self-tapes I throw out. You know, it was excellent. And he remembered all the dialogue just for a little self-tape audition for a short film. And I was like, wow, yeah, this kid's great. I'd love to work with him one day. Amazing. Like, I can't believe he did this self-tape. Thank him so much. But he's not Spencer. He has 0% he could be Leonardo DiCaprio. It's not going to be Spencer. Spencer has to be like a 55 kilogram, shorter than me, scrawny looking white kid that, you know, or at least someone we can make look like that. And we turned out we got Liam, who's a bit of a supermodel and a really, really cool dude.
Yeah.
But he's skinny and it worked.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you bring up a great point. Oftentimes, if you're not the lead characters, the supporting characters are often cast around the leads. So if the
Yes.
lead man is
Yes.
Tom Cruise and he's not very tall, the people around him will be oftentimes smaller than him.
100%.
Unless they're like evil or, the character is different.
100%.
But it's just there's so many elements that get put into it. And one clear example was in Devoured, the woman that we ended up having play Martha, Erin Connor, amazing actress. She was perfect because she was taller than me and I was going to be playing Anna, whereas there were some other ladies that were amazing, fantastic auditions, but they were same height or too young.
Too young.
Exactly, or just couldn't deliver the attitude that we were looking for. Now, attitude is a bit more talent-based. Whether someone looks at a character, their interpretation will be different. And this comes down to also when you are an actor and you choose to go a certain way with a character, it often seems, I definitely find that in acting classes and online training and such, you're taught to be ballsy, to make choices that are not going to be taken by a lot of people. But I think at the end of the day, if it's not your intuition that can make that best guidance, it's taking the notes from whatever you can get. And I know sometimes, like, if you get an audition from, like, casting networks or Showcast, oftentimes there's almost no notes. There's almost no guidance on what the character is like. But if you are doing a short film where you have more notes on what the character is like, the closer you can get to those notes, the higher the probability that you are going to do what the director was looking for in the first place.
Yeah, and that makes it easy as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, the more direction you have, the easier it is.
For the actor, definitely. It is tricky, though, because that isn't always listed, and you may have been able to pull that off perfectly. But again, in the notes, in the audition briefing, you're not given that information at all. So you might have done 3 different takes that definitely show your versatility as an actor and your ability to change things up and make different choices within the scene. But even those 3 might have been a completely different energy than what the director wants, and then the director or the casting director could see a self-tape of someone who maybe hasn't done as much as you, doesn't have the talent or versatility, and is just sort of naturally closer to being the energy of that character, even if they aren't, a trained actor or necessarily very good. They sort of have the energy, they have the right voice, they have the right look. And the casting director goes, well, it doesn't matter that they're not the best or have this experience. Everything else is fine, so we can teach them to act. The director will get the performance out of them they need by repetition and by just writing them. And a lot of times that happens, doesn't it?
Exactly. And
it's another reason not to feel bad.
That's 100% correct. And I mean, I definitely have seen that myself as well.
Yeah, many times.
I mean, and oftentimes it can go both ways too. I mean, yes, there's a lot of room for direction when you get onto set. I mean, as a director myself, that's something that I want to get actors that are able to take on direction and able to change the way that they say words or phrases and eye movements and such. And sometimes you get onto set and it might be the complete opposite. You might get an actor that you thought was perfect. They look the part.
The self-tape was nailed.
The self-tape was perfect. And then when they get onto set, it just doesn't work. They don't give you what you want.
They don't take the direction. You give them direction or something and it's the same. Yeah, that can happen.
Exactly. And I think what that has to do with the casting process and for tips for actors listening to this, I think if you can dress suggestively in your self-tape, that's already one big plus. If they're looking for someone with a military background, you sure as hell need to wear some sort of green or something.
Yeah.
Wear a cool jacket. If they're looking for someone that is more of a beat-up alcoholic type, dress suggestively.
Yeah.
It's important to not be bummed out that if you don't get a small role, you never know when the bigger role is going to come by. Yeah. But also, there are people that got discovered from smaller roles. True. And it's definitely possible that can happen to you as well. But going back to the casting equation, I think it's really important as actors that we don't get too caught up in rejections and taking that personally. I think when we put ourselves out there as artists, it's always going to be hard to not take things personally. I definitely felt that myself. You know, you read a script and you're like, I love this. I really want to play this character.
Yeah.
I fit it 100%. Like, you literally read the brief and you're like, this is me. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
like
even
if
need
I
to
don't
act.
do this, the movie's going to be crap. Like the
Yeah.
movie is literally going to be crap if you don't cast me in this
Exactly.
role.
But then also
The amount of times I thought
all the time.
all the time.
But you read the casting brief, you know, you read the character and the description that the director or whoever wrote it, actually that's provided is literally, it's like you're reading yourself. You know, it has the same personality, the same traits, the same characteristics, same height, same like voice tone. And then you get an audition, great. You send in the tape, and then you just get that same old rejection letter.
Yeah, copy paste.
Yeah, it's usually copy paste, and that's fine. And otherwise,
And then
you
like
don't
a
even
year
get an
later,
audition
you
at
see
all.
the show comes out, and that like character like doesn't even have that scene anymore. It's like you know, change from like a 20-something-year-old brunette action chick to like a blonde 60-year-old lady sitting there saying only 2 words, and
Yeah,
it's like
that's
completely.
true.
And that happens all the time as well.
Yeah,
That does happen. So again, even if you think you're 99% of the way there and you're like, oh, how did that go wrong? How did I not get that? That could be the case. It could be something as random as that,
yeah.
which happens often.
And I think for actors, one of the best things you can possibly do is to actually write a little project yourself and be the casting director. Because all of a sudden you are going to look at things completely differently. You know, you are going to, let's just say, use Star Now. Star Now is a very cheap website that you can sign up to. It's got a really cool like profile section and such, and you can apply to gigs. It's usually unpaid, but if you're just starting out as an actor, it's a great place to start. That's where I started. That's where Jazz started. That's where we really got a lot of our initial experience and kind of our resume
film,
built
yeah.
for film.
Yeah.
But say you write a little 4-minute film or even 2-minute film, it really doesn't matter. And you've got the script ready. Maybe let's just say you have a couple characters, one male, one female, and you want to go to market and find amazing actors.
Yeah.
You put out an ad on Star Now, and you give it a description, and just wait for all the headshots to pop up.
Yeah.
One, you're gonna learn a lot about headshots.
Yes.
Straight away,
You'll see how
you will
important it is.
see
Yeah.
how important it is to have a great headshot.
Oh, people will click on my profile. They'll look at all my showreel scenes. Like they'll see like my CV of the like 25 theatre plays I've done in Brisbane that are like
No.
don't care.
They won't.
Don't
The
care.
first impression is the headshot, and it's actually incredible how the eyes will just gravitate towards certain people.
Yeah.
You know, when I was looking at all of those headshots when we were casting our first film, Infinitely More Important, it was almost like gravity was pulling me towards the people that I naturally, instinctively
stood out,
just
had those
really stood
features.
out, and it just felt like they were the right people straight away. I don't know that they can act. I don't know what they sound like, but you put them in your little wait list, or
Yep.
your little like category of maybes,
Yeah.
and those are the people that you're gonna dive deeper into.
Yeah, that's the first thing. That's really the first hurdle as well when you're looking at casting on these sites, casting independent projects, or being a casting director. That's what you're looking at.
Yeah. And casting directors will look at thousands of photos for one role, especially the bigger the role it is. So imagine as a little indie project,
Yeah.
you can't even select, within, one person out of 50.
Yeah.
And imagine that with 1,000. And that's where kind of your headshots really, really come in.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not so much whether you've got $1,000 headshot or some friend of yours did it for free. It's really about like showing off what you look like as a person,
Yes.
because
Truthfully,
that's truthfully,
but aesthetically as well.
yeah, you don't
It's
want
gotta
it to look
capture
bad,
the eye
exactly,
and show your face in its true form if shot well by people that know how to shoot you.
exactly.
We all have bad angles and
we
stuff,
do.
but you want to work with filmmakers who can instantly recognize which angles are good and which
Yeah,
ones to
exactly.
use for the actors they're using.
So then you've now looked at a bunch of headshots and you've selected a few that seem to gravitate to you. Now, after that comes the hard part. And this is where you will ask them to do an audition for you. This is when what happens is you'll realize that actually not many people will follow through.
True.
Interestingly, one of the things that I noticed a lot when I was casting for my own projects was actually people will self-disqualify themselves. They'll actually, like, you'll ask them to audition, but then several days will go by and you won't receive a self-tape.
Yeah.
Or they'll come up with some excuse for, like, why they can't do it. And I find that really interesting because if you've been given an opportunity, why not kind of follow through?
Perhaps they've dug more into the opportunity. I've done that. I've done that to many projects, even highly paid projects, because you look further into it and you see the company, I actually don't want anything to do with that company. I don't want my brand associated with that company.
Values and...
Yeah, exactly. Or you look further into the project and you might think it sounds great on paper on the casting brief on Star Now, but then you dig into who's actually directing it and who's the other actors in it. You look them up on Instagram. You see, it's going to be kind of amateur. Or it could just be something else. Something comes up in someone's life, or it simply isn't paid enough. Because from our perspective, we've cast obviously for independent productions.
Yeah.
Some of which have low pay, like just making sure everyone's fed and watered and costs are covered. But we're not a Hollywood company yet, so we can't be paying people like $100,000 for a role in a short film or something.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
We're speaking from that perspective. But again, there are high budget projects that people drop out of, even after successfully getting that first, we're interested, you've passed this level, now can you send us a self-tape or can you come in for an audition? And you're correct, a lot of people get to that stage. A few days could have gone by, they've looked into that job more, more information has come and they've decided not to.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone has their reasons. So now you've successfully, we'll just get back to where we're at before. So now you've selected a number of actors. They've done your auditions. You like some of them.
Yeah.
And then you go and make your film, which is an amazing experience in its own right that we'll cover in another podcast. But this process is amazing for any actor to really do themselves. You'll learn so much and you'll never look at auditions the same way again. Because you'll realize at the moment that an audition comes through, you've already been pre-selected. And there's already a pretty good chance that you are the one that they're looking for. So grab those auditions by the horns and make sure to give it a really good hot shot. Because people will self-disqualify for all sorts of reasons. And you just never can get personally offended if you don't get the role.
Yeah, so don't be bummed out, guys. Don't be bummed out because it can be, you've got a 0% chance or it could have been this close and something's happened to just make them go with the other person.
Exactly.
Either way, you have no control. All you can control is your headshots, right? That we talked
your
about.
show reel.
Your points of contact to that casting director and the project. So the first point of contact, the headshot. Second point of contact, the audition that you send in, your CV and what you've done, that doesn't even really matter with these things.
Exactly.
And then the third point of contact being that follow-up.
Yeah.
Following that up and being there and taking on the role.
Exactly. And once you do have the role, celebrate hard and make sure to show them who's boss when you get on set.
Damn right.
I hope you've learned something new with this little podcast on everything to do with casting, and we wish you the best of luck casting your own projects.
I hope it's energized you guys, given you some insight into the real workings of sort of how it happens, and hopefully it frees you a little bit.
Yeah.
Hopefully you are freer now within your acting performance sphere to not feel as offended if you don't hear a reply.
Exactly.
So just enjoy what you do and do what you can.
That's it. This was the Creative Constitution Podcast. See you in episode 3.